this is Ireland, and this is Ireland, and even this is Ireland. And if you look at the statistics for different countries, you will unexpectedly find out that Ireland is the richest country on earth. Indeed, the country's economic growth over the past 10 years has been at the level of world leaders. But how is this possible? How did a country with a population of only 5 million people achieve this? The fact is that the crazy prosperity of the country, which is home to the most high-tech companies in the world, is actually a painted bubble. Most of the wealth does not belong to Ireland itself. So what's the trick? Today, I will tell you how Ireland managed to get rich and become the capital of the IT industry. How the Irish still managed to pull off the wealth trick. Hello, this is the backside of Ireland, which you won't find in any travel guide. Let's go. Today, Ireland's GDP is $523 billion. And if you look at the graph of this GDP, you can see the rapid rise of the economy in recent years, which was very weak back in the 80s. What the hell happened there? Let's turn back a few pages in our guide. Ireland, which for a long time was essentially a colony of the British neighbors, was an economically weak country. It was mainly engaged in agriculture, and it grew mostly potatoes. And after the Great Famine of 1845, a huge number of people began to leave Ireland. Today, there are 70 to 80 million people with Irish roots in the world. Famous people such as John F. Kennedy, Gary Ford, and Walt Disney had Irish ancestors. The island has no resources, no crossing of trade routes, no powerful industry, and the climate is not very good. It rains all the time. If I were playing a computer game, I would hardly choose a country with such initial data. Plus, add to that the poor relations with its neighbor, the UK. Since 1921, the northern part of the island, which did not want to separate from Britain, has been a completely different state, Northern Ireland. And until the late 90s, there were constant military clashes over the northern province of Ulster. So, having nothing, the Irish constantly have to invent something. For example, let's take the airport of the small town of Shannon. It was here that the world's first duty-free store was invented. At that time, airplanes flying across the ocean had to land for refueling in Shannon. And here, passengers were offered local food and alcohol without any duties. But, of course, duty-free was not the reason for such rapid growth. We've come to the most interesting part. Ireland has proposed a free economic zone. What does it mean? Firms and companies are offered to open their offices, production, and development centers without duties and minimal taxes. This means that firms can assemble and develop goods in Ireland and sell them profitably to Europe. For the Irish, this creates new jobs and money for the country's budget. In 1956, Ireland reduced its taxes for those who open production to 10%. At that time, it was 46% in the United States and 52% in the United Kingdom. And from that moment on, Ireland became a very convenient entrance to Europe for foreign companies. For example, Apple opened its first factory outside the United States in 1980. And in different years, such giants as Microsoft, Dell, Sony, and Lufthansa had come to Ireland. Add to this another condition. Almost 95% of the Irish speak English. This greatly facilitated communication with American employees and partners. But the real breakthrough came in 1996. And the reason for this was IRS Form 8832. Before that, American companies that were abroad still paid tax in the United States. And this form allowed companies to choose which country to pay taxes in. And what do you think happened? That's right, American companies started opening their offices in Ireland. Dozens of offices were appearing there. Google, Microsoft, Intel, IBM, eBay, Apple, LinkedIn, and many others. In addition, in the late 90s, when there was a massive migration of American companies to the Irish market, they were also attracted by low salaries, which in those years were much lower than in other Western European countries. And after that, Ireland's GDP began to grow. It has been growing especially strongly since 1999, when the island established one of the lowest corporate taxes at 12.5%. And they even gave a name to this phenomenon called the Celtic Tiger. So since the mid-90s, the life of the Irish has only been improving. Moreover, the country's government is not sitting still either. They are implementing various educational reforms. Why? To increase the number of smart people in the country. And today, Ireland is among the top countries in terms of the number of people with education. During this time, more than 1,500 international companies will come to the country, and half of them are American. Today, Ireland is called the European capital of IT business. But what is the trick I mentioned at the beginning? The fact is that all these multi-billion-dollar profits do not belong to Ireland itself. Let me try to explain why. The secret of this trick is intellectual property. What? What kind of intellectual property? There are all kinds of patents and licenses for goods and services. The fact is that the main profit of companies comes not from production, but from patents for goods. That is why, in order to benefit from taxes, many corporations have moved their divisions to Ireland, along with their intellectual property. For example, the American company Apple manufactures its phones in China. What does Ireland have to do with it? Apple simply states that the main value of the iPhone is the patents, which are Irish. And in fact, the iPhone is now Irish. Whenever intellectual property is used to produce goods abroad, the products are considered Irish. As a result, most of the profits go to Ireland, which formally increases the country's GDP, although this money does not even leave American bank accounts and has no impact on the real economy of Ireland. Do you understand what's going on? With this simple scheme, large companies need Ireland to officially avoid taxes. Most of the profits are sent to Ireland because it's where the patents and licenses are. But it doesn't stay in Ireland. It goes to other countries to pay as little tax as possible. By juggling different indicators, the company can distribute profits as it wants within its branches and thus move profits from Ireland to other countries. In the case of Ireland, this problem was raised in 2015 when GDP growth was an absurd 25%. That's when the term leprechaun economy was coined, hinting at the fact that there are much more fairy tales in it than reality. Are you still with us? Then make sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you. An even better painted picture of wealth can be seen if we compare a country's GDP with its gross national income. What is GNI, you may ask, and I'll tell you. It's if you take GDP and subtract everything that is exported by foreign companies. For developed countries, it is usually 2 to 3%. For example, for China, it is 3%. For the United States, 1%. But for Ireland, it will be 31%. If we clear GDP of all the money that is generated in financial statements, real GDP will be reduced by almost 50%. And in fact, the country's GDP has not been growing since 2008, which once again proves that any rankings of the welfare of countries are relative and the numbers can be swapped around as politicians wish. First and foremost, but at the same time, Ireland still has an excellent standard of living with average salaries of $3,800. And this does not negate the economic miracle that the country experienced from the late 80s to 2008. The 2008 crisis still has a significant impact on the country's economy, particularly on the real estate market. There is a catastrophic shortage of housing in the country and prices are constantly rising. For example, to rent an apartment, you will have to pay an average of 2,600 euros. There is a huge queue just to look at an apartment. That's why the Irish have a very popular joke that it's much easier to find a job than a place to live. But despite all these problems, the modern history of Ireland is actually an example of how a country with nothing to begin with can create a working economy and become a center of the IT industry. According to Forbes, Ireland is one of the best countries for doing business, and Ireland ranks second in the ranking of economic competitiveness. And what is your opinion about Ireland? Write it in the comments. Thank you for watching. See you soon.